question that my teacher, my Peter Block, uses a lot, and it's called the crossroads question. So for Rejoice and Holly, whichever you want to start with this, what is the crossroads, do you think, that we as a parish or a city find ourselves at about crossroads?
Well, at this point, I think the crossroads that we find ourselves in is seeing it, as we've already talked about a little bit, as it's not me or you or them or us, it's all of us. Because whether we're talking about within the parish or in the city, mental health, as you alluded to, is not necessarily just the guy or the girl or whoever we see out there acting in a way that makes us feel uncomfortable, but any number of us sitting in here could be having or have had experience with mental health challenges. And from my personal perspective, as well as the committee, I think it's essential that we recognize that as Christchurch being a very welcoming place, that we include the issue of mental health or mental illness. And also the other crossroads I think we find ourselves at as people of faith and as a larger society is taking away the stigma. The stigma that's attached to it. It's relieving and reducing that stigma. And once we can actually remove the stigma, then we can actually address the issues and see that it's, there's no stigma attached to having diabetes. If the question is it type 2 or is it type 1?
And also, just to build on that too, one of the things that I was very conscious of as I began my ministry a decade or so ago was we were, as a community at the Cathedral, very welcoming around sexuality, around gender, and a continuum of gender, if I can use that language. And so it was kind of the next step, I think, for us as a community. One of the next steps for us as a community. So, okay, so we're it's okay, right? Where do we go next? Glenn, did you want to have a think about that question? Or?
No, but I think what you're saying leads into the second question.
Which is, what do we do well as a parish in making space for those of us with mental health issues?
And I think, as Alistair's already said, we've done a great job as a parish in learning about GBLT folk, making it a safe place for them to be. And that's wonderful. So what we are hoping to do is to make our parish also a safe place for any and all of us who are facing mental health challenges. And we hope to do this through some education, through the use of homilies on this aspect, becoming engaged in some advocacy work, and hearing how people are experiencing our parish, so that this can be a safe place. Just as I think it really is, as Alistair's already said, a really safe place for GBLT folk.
Yeah. So what's a change, do you think, Rejoice? So what's a change we could make?
Well, I think there's so many changes we could make. We could be here all night, but I think one of the things one of the basic things we need to do as a parish is to figure out how just making a commitment to learning more. What more can we do? What more can we learn? How? Because there's no identifying marker that you have mental health. You have mental health. I have mental health. There is, it's not like there's a mark on anybody. But how do we become more aware, more somebody that we suspect or that may not be feeling okay in that sense, how do we react to them? How do we deal with them when they're in our midst to make them feel that it's a safe place for them to be or to come, especially, I'm talking about the cathedral, I'm talking about parish. So, and I think we do that quite well in terms of welcoming people. There's a couple of instances I've observed not too long ago. There's a gentleman that comes Sundays. Usually he doesn't sit. He stands by the east alcove.
Oh, yeah,
on the ramp there. He just stands out and he goes to communion and he goes to healing prayer, and you can see him kind of struggling a little bit, trying to kind of contain himself. But he's very, at coffee hour, I've seen people approach him, have conversations with him. I've had a little bit of a conversation with him myself. And so that is what we need to do more of that. We need to do more of that. And one of the other things we're talking about is to, hopefully once we get back into have more of a setup, we already do the lunch program.
Right.
And maybe add, as an adjunct to that, have what we're calling a living room, so people can sort of drop in, people can come, someone will be there to have a conversation with, maybe give them resources. But in order to get there, we have to train ourselves, and we all need to be open to that training. So I hope that answers.
I also want to comment on what's going on in our city. In addition to our parish, I think it's encouraging to see the increasing signs around the city about speaking out around mental illness, and the increasing articles and testimonies from folk in city newspapers. But in spite of this, I was alarmed to hear a program during Mental Health Week a couple of weeks ago on CCC that less than half the people who suffer from depression receive help. Less than half. Some because of the stigma that we've already talked about, that's attached to seeking help. Also from the lack of treatment facilities, which is very real still in our city. And this is still also really real, the fear of what will happen in the workplace if it's found out that I'm suffering from depression. So it's not only as a parish, but it's as a city that we still have a long way to go.
I just very quickly on that point, I have this image in my mind. So this goes back 22 years ago, something like that. I was working for a large Canadian firm, and the powers that be at the time decided they wanted to centralize my department to Toronto, from Vancouver, and so they asked us if we wanted to move to Toronto, and we all said,
No way.
so anyway, that's how we found ourselves laid off. And as part of that, the layoff package, and some may be familiar with this, we were sent off to school, as it were, right, to go and learn how to write a resume, and not to be not to be facetious, it was very helpful stuff. It was very, very good stuff. And as some of you know, I have my own history with alcohol, and this was in the early stages of me identifying that I had some alcohol problems, and so I was on the wagon at the time, and I said, and I actually named that in one of these sessions, and it was like a group session, a bunch of people around, right? And the person who was leading that said, "Oh, you should never sell it. No, don't ever say it. Don't ever do it. Don't
Right.
ever." And it stuck with me as this, well, hang on a moment here, right? Like if transparent. If I can't talk about my truth, I'm not entirely sure what the implications of that might be. And so I just share with you that there's a whole bunch of areas here where the stigma of me not being perfect by somebody else's standard. I think a lot of us have experiences.
Sure, absolutely.
And on the other side, as somebody who teach people when they feel laid off how to write those resumes,
Yeah.
I know. It wasn't you.
It wasn't you.
But I found that I had got myself into trouble for allowing people to talk about things like that because it's not my job. My job is to get them to write that resume. My job is to get them to find another job and get out of our program so the next person can come in.
Right.
See, so the stigma is, so those are the things that we need to change as a society.
Yeah.
Because it's, I've been called in to manager's office many times. You're always opening those cans of worms. It's not important. Your job is to make sure they have a decent resume, get a job interview, and get hired. So that person telling you that she or he was trying to protect themselves as well.
Yeah, may well be.
Yes.
That's thanks for that. Thanks for that. The other wondering that I've had, and I'm going off script here, just because I do.
Try to deal with that.
We'll have some feedback later. But my wondering is around the definition of mental health, and here's where we're going. I had a really interesting conversation earlier this week with somebody, and they were talking about somebody very close to them who had been diagnosed with a neurological disease. And the general prognosis, as I understand it, with this particular neurological disease is things are going to go bad.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of their ability to function and things like that. It's very, very sad conversation. And I was thinking in that, as that pastoral session ended, I was thinking, there's something here too about this work around mental health.
Yes,
sure.
So it's almost like what's the root of the mental health issue? There could be any number of issues there, from addiction to depression to neurological.
Absolutely. No, that's really important note to recognize that. And there's a very fine line, and we know, a lot of depression is caused by a chemical imbalance. How much of that is neurological? We're still really in the learning stages also.
Oh, yeah.
What we learned about the development of the brain as it impacts on our neurological development has been immense in the last 15 years, actually.
Oh, yeah. It was amazing. My mom, as some of you know, my mom has some dementia. She's in a care home.
Sure.
And my brother's physician described it very well. He said, as we age, sometimes our organs fail. So we can have heart failure, we can have kidney failure, we can have liver failure, we can have brain failure.
Absolutely.
And it was, wow.
Yeah, that's what happens.
That's what happens.
Of course. It's pretty normal, except for you and me.
It's the rest of them. So, another question here. What's one specific action I can make as an individual that would benefit those of us with mental health issues?
So let me start. And I would say that for me, I would begin by saying that we need to recognize that each person is a unique individual. And I guess for me, I need to try to be present to a person who may look or act differently than me. And I also need to work hard at trying to understand my own assumptions and my own biases. I like to think I don't have any, but I'm sure I do. I'm sure each one of us does. There's a wonderful statement in the change room at my gym around transgendered folk who community centers are really trying to welcome and be open to. And the statement says, don't stop and stare. Stop and listen. Which I think is a wonderful thing for us to be aware. Don't stop and stare, stop and listen. So that's where I would go with that question.
Yeah, that's neat. That's really cool, that idea of, as Peter would say in pastoral conversations, don't just do something, sit there.
Sometimes that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we can all get really caught up with wanting to fix things. Or maybe I should speak for myself. And just sitting and being and listening is huge. Just huge.
Joyce, do you have something on that?
Well, and to add to that, like Pauline was saying, yes, it's important to sit and listen. And some of us, unfortunately, doing is embedded into our DNA. So the sitting part is harder. But so I think getting educated, just getting educated, and also, I think you alluded to it, one size fits one, not one size fits all. And even in saying that, in my own experience of working with people and family members, what solution may work for the person today, maybe 2 hours from now, the same solution may not work.
That's right.
So it's trying to be flexible, having compassion for yourself, first and foremost, and for the person. So I think that's the one thing we can do, just being open and willing and recognizing that we're not going to have all the answers all the time, or sometimes none at all. So.
Yeah, can I just riff on this? So one of the things that I've been aware of sitting around various, for want of a better term, leadership tables at the Cathedral is this balance between, if we're going to be inclusive, if we're going to welcome everybody, right? Open doors, open hearts, open minds. We're going to welcome everybody. Then the direction that we have tended to go has been to make sure that there are some, for want of a better term, ground rules that everybody operates on. So simple ones in the sanctuary: no sleeping. Right? Helps during, sorry? Yeah, no sleeping.
It's rule number 10.
Yeah.
Remember that, Liz.
Yeah. Next time I'm preaching. Next time I'm preaching, Liz, don't fall asleep. Yeah. But no sleeping, no panhandling, right? Those kinds of things. And so your point, Rejoice, here about compassion for self, one of the places that I go with that is making sure that we're all okay. And that some behaviors can trigger fear responses,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And now we're not feeling comfortable anymore now. And maybe there's some health, it's a healthy thing to be uncomfortable periodically, right? Afflict the comfortable with the comfortably afflicted. But is there something here about the community? And I appreciate it.
Well, I think that's where the need for some education comes in, Alistair. Because certainly it's very human to feel uncomfortable in certain situations. And the more knowledge that we have about certain behaviors or certain ways of being, I think to being a lot of education, a lot of discussion about what is this. These folks are just like us, you know? They're not different.
Yeah.
But what do we need to understand? What do we need to understand about a person that's transgender so that I can be comfortable with that person?
It almost sounds like, looking back on it now, it almost sounds like, oh, how tough is it? You know?
Yeah,
Like, hello?
yeah, like, and I'm sure.
But at the
there
time,
must
those of
be-
us, looking around, you know, those of us, there was a lot of dialogue.
There must have been a lot of dialogue, and that's what I think we
Yeah.
need to be engaged in.
I don't know if I'm breaking format, but I have a question
Yeah, sure.
for any of you three. Right now, we're talking as if we're not the person that's suffering the mental health challenge, and I'm wondering if you could talk about the education that happens about your own self, that you might actually recognize that you are in fact the sufferer.
Oh,
Yes.
sure.
Lovely.
Good point. Yeah, and I don't want to give the impression that nobody knows anything about how to be in this area. So please don't hear that.
No. I hear this opportunity. I know from my own experience in my early 20s, I had panic attacks. I didn't know what they were. So I
Sure.
heard someone speak about them. I thought, oh, there's a name. There's something I can do.
Yeah, it's not a heart attack, it's a panic attack.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say on that, I think, Liz, for me, it was, recognizing that I had had a cold and then I'd had the flu. That I had had a period in my life brought on by an event that, in retrospect, I was depressed. So I was so very fortunate to have had, well, I had enough resources that I was able to get help. I had ongoing connections with my spiritual director, for example. I was able to say to friends, this is what's going on. They would say, oh, you know, go and talk to so-and-so, that kind of stuff. So I was really, really fortunate that I had the resources to be able to, the financial resources, to be very clear, to be able to go and do that and to have those conversations. And at the same time, one of my learnings out of that was that I really didn't know what was going on until I was out of it, until I was on the other side, and I could look back and go, oh. So if it happens again, please, maybe I'll have the wherewithal to be aware of that. But,
Yeah, and I had a similar experience to Alistair, although I wasn't even aware enough to seek help. We moved to the interior of BC when I was 3 months pregnant, and I thought I was never going to see the sun again. And I was really, really depressed, but like you, Alistair, didn't kind of realize that. I thought it was just kind of the move from comfortable home in Toronto that was troubling me, but it was a lot deeper than that. So looking back, I now know, and I would know again if I went into that space. But it was a really horrible time, and I was a miserable wife, I'll tell you. But, yeah. Anyway.
In terms of recognizing your own, it's once again, I think it's hard because one size fits one. I may be able to know and recognize right away and say, oh, okay, I'm having an anxiety attack, or this is a panic attack, or, oh, okay, I have some depressive moments happening here, let me take a step back. But then on the other hand, maybe another time, I may be in complete denial, Because
Well, there's
what,
that too.
yes, or there's no, I don't have time. You know, I don't have time, you know.
No time for this.
I don't have time for this, okay? Or not being unaware. And I think that happens to all of us, not just in terms of mental health, but in other things. You know? So I think it's kind of hard to say, but just being, that's why I'm saying having compassion for ourselves as well.
But I think, Liz, your point is well taken.
Yes.
Helping each of us understand if there's something going on
Yeah.
and what we do.
Yeah. I just commend this to you. I've been listening to this as a podcast. It's a rebroadcast of 3 parts on ideas on the CCC, 3-parter on Dante, and that extraordinary work. And so there's all sorts of levels to it in the 3 parts, but this idea of descent in order to come up again, right? And in the middle of my journey, I found myself alone in a dark wood, or all that kind of stuff. So where do you find or experience the divine in these kinds of conversations, in your work in mental health?
When I was thinking about this, I thought, you know, it's just the importance of community. And that is one of the reasons that I got involved. Because I think regardless of where we are, being community, that's part of the divine. And I think Bishop Jim says it best. God exists because of us. And we exist because of God. And when we're calling on God to help, it's not God out there, it's God in here. It's the community of faith, the community of people, the community of family, supporting one another. That's very essential to me. And I think that's why, for me, that's why the divine meets us. You know, and God meets us where we are. Wherever you are, God is there. Even when we're languishing.
Yeah, the other piece for me is the message of the crucifixion. Because I think in the crucifixion, we know profoundly that Jesus suffered. And that's a powerful message for me when I may be suffering or I may be walking with somebody who's suffering. So Christ, as Joyce says, is there in that suffering. And the other thing that strikes me is that in all faith communities, there's something that's like the golden rule. And that's, you know, to do unto others as you would have done to yourself. So there's that piece, I think, as well.